kids, it's me, Tony Holmperm, drag queen, makeup enthusiast, celebrity impersonator, jack of all trades. Thanks for stopping into my channel. What I wanted to do today, because it seems everybody in the makeup enthusiast, beauty influencer realms are going crazy over, I think I'll show it over here, the BeautyBay Wilderness palette. And I was quite tempted to get it myself. It's a beautiful palette. I love the BeautyBay palettes. I personally have the Book of Magic palette. I have the Bright Mattes palette. I have their little pastels palette. So I quite enjoy the formula. I like the product that they make, and their prices are quite reasonable. However, in my last video, I went on a little tirade about how I just don't need any more eyeshadow palettes. Also, just a side note to that, I did end up ordering a palette that very same night after insisting I was not going to be buying any more palettes. But you'll see what that is when I get the palette. I have an idea planned for that. So anyway, the BeautyBay Wilderness palette. It's a beautiful palette. It's got those grungy greens and the blues and the reddish tones. And everyone has just been going wild over the Wilderness palette. And I looked at it and I was very tempted. I was very tempted to buy it. It's only 15 bucks. I forget exactly what it works out to with the exchange rate, because it does come from the UK, and of course you do have the international shipping and whatnot. But the palettes are quite reasonable, and like I said, I have a few of them and I'm very happy with them. But I just decided, no, I don't need it. I don't need it. And one of the things, as I put my thinking cap on and came to realize, is I probably already have all the colors of that palette. I don't need to buy that palette to get those colors, because I already have them. And I decided to investigate my eyeshadow palette collection and see what I have that looked most like the Wilderness palette, or see if I had maybe like a couple that could be combined and would look like the Wilderness palette. Now, of course, let me just say, if you don't have the Wilderness palette and you're just, so in love with that color story that you've got to have it, and, it's not problematic for you to buy it, and go ahead, get it, enjoy it. I mean, I have so many palettes of my own that I'm like, I don't know why I bought them, but I did. And, granted, I'm happy that I have them, so whatever. But as I was looking at the BeautyBay Wilderness palette and going through my collection, I found a palette that I thought, especially as it's a palette that was made by BeautyBay, I said, this is quite interesting, because this is a palette that BeautyBay themselves made. And gotta pull that plastic sheeting off. Didn't realize it was still on. It's the Me, Myself, and Mitchell palette, which was made by BeautyBay. And now remember, they don't make this palette anymore. But hello, when we open it up and we look at the color story, what do we have? We have the grungy greens and the acidy greens and the blues and the reddish tones, and even like the orangey and yellow and blue shimmer. Granted, not exactly like the Wilderness palette, but I think if I wanted to make a look that somebody had made with the Wilderness palette, I'm pretty sure I could make a very similar look with the Mitchell palette. And it doesn't surprise me that it's got a similar color story because it was made by BeautyBay and they don't make it anymore. So it would only make sense to add something back into their line that kind of fills that hole. So if you have the Me, Myself, Mitchell palette and you are lamenting that you don't have the Wilderness palette, you probably don't need it because you have this one. So that was the first palette that I thought could be a dupe, more or less, for the Wilderness palette. Oh, by the way, I'm trying out this white screen. I don't know. I can't get those wrinkles out. It's the way it hangs. Don't read me, okay? Looking at the Wilderness palette and looking at all the colors in it, because it's sort of it's been described as a grungy rainbow palette. Now, a palette that a lot of people probably have in their makeup collection is this palette, and it is the Morphe James Charles palette. I think it's probably one of the biggest selling palettes of all time. So if you have the palette, well, guess what? You could probably dupe a lot of the colors in the Wilderness palette. Here's your greens, your blues, reds, yellow, orange, brown. It does have like a blue shimmer, which I think the Wilderness palette has. Personally, I don't really use shimmers. I really only use mattes. So it doesn't bother me that there really aren't very many shimmers in here. But I think this is definitely a palette that you could use to make a lot of similar looks that the Wilderness palette makes. So, okay, the next palette in my collection that I was looking through and I said, I could probably make some similar looks to the Wilderness palette with it. And why I bought this, I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking. It's the Wet n Wild palette. That's a dupe for the James Charles palette. And let's take the plastic off. I mean, same exact color story as the James Charles palette. And you could certainly, whatever looks you create with the James Charles palette, you can pretty much create the same looks with this palette. And if you're trying to create looks like the Wilderness palette, a lot of them will work. Next on the list of palettes I have that I realize could dupe the Wilderness palette is the Be Perfect Carnival XL Pro palette in collaboration with Stacey Marie. This happens to be one of my favorite palettes in my collection. I just love this palette. It's so good. But we've got the grungy greens and blues, reds, some neutral tones. Again, there's some few shimmers in here that are similar to the Wilderness palette, and I think this could dupe a lot of the colors that are in the Wilderness palette. So if you have this palette, maybe you don't need the Wilderness palette. Another palette in my collection that I said, I could use this to dupe some Wilderness palette looks. The Makeup Revolution and Alexis Stone Instinct palette, which is really just a rainbow palette, but you've got your greens and your blues, the reddish, sort of orangey, the yellow, so that would work. One of the other reasons I wanted to show this is because Alexis Stone is coming out with a new palette, the Sensorium palette, and that's the one that I ordered on Friday night. So I think what I want to do is when I get that palette, I want to compare it to this palette. There's also a companion palette that went with this. It was magnetic and it went on the bottom and it had all these shimmery transformative shades. and I'm curious to see how the two will compare. So, you know, keep an eye out for that video when I actually make it. Of course, if you subscribe to my channel, you'll automatically get notified when that video comes out. Keep that in mind. Okay, another rainbow palette that I feel could dupe the Wilderness palette from my collection. This is the Makeup Playing in Makeup by Yolanda Jamrock palette. This is a beautiful, beautiful rainbow palette, but a lot of nice deep jewel tones, and you know, you've got your dark green, blue, the lighter blue, reddish tones, the orangey. It's just a great palette. It's beautiful, and I know a lot of the looks of the Wilderness palette, I could certainly come close to making something similar with this palette. This is a new palette to my collection, one of the few that I bought this year. It's the Blends 30 Matte Pigment Palette, I think. I'm not sure if that's the name. Anyway, a lot of makeup enthusiasts have raved about this palette, and whoops, they went to plastic. I felt like I had to have it. Beautiful, beautiful palette. And as you can see, the greens, the blues, the reds, browns, orange, yellow. No shimmers in this, of course. This is an all matte palette, which would work for me. I'm not going to use shimmers, but this is a beautiful palette, and if you're looking for a great rainbow palette, this would be a great one to pick up. Now, this is another palette by BeautyBay themselves. It's the Bright Matte palette. One of my favorite palettes. What is this? This is a 42 color palette, all matte shades. And here it is. And you can see, if you have this palette, you've got a lot of similar colors to the Wilderness palette. Your greens, blues, reddish tones, some neutrals, the orange, the yellow. So if you have this palette and you don't want to buy the Wilderness palette, you could probably make a lot of similar looks with this one. Now, one of the things that occurred to me when I was looking at the Wilderness palette is I tend to lean more towards doing either neutral or blue or green-based looks. So the reddish tones that are in it, I probably might never ever use. And again, I don't know how many other people would use the red tones either. Red is not really a color that most people use when they're doing a makeup look. So I thought, why not just see what I have in blues and greens that would be similar? And these are two palettes that I have that are green blue. They're from Moonslice Beauty. Okay, and let me open these up so you can see what I'm talking about. Here they are together. If you combine these, you have a lot of beautiful green and blue shades, and certainly very similar to the green and blue tones in the Wilderness palette. The green even has a brown, a yellow, sort of an umber color. So definitely you could combine these two palettes and make some great looks that would be similar to the Wilderness palette. Another pair of palettes I have that I thought would work good to make the green-blue color combination are from BH Cosmetics. From the Sweet Shop collection, I have the Pistachio and the bubblegum palette. And the pistachio is the green, and the bubblegum is the blue. And I'm gonna put those right together there for you to see. Come on, come on. So if you put these two together, a beautiful green and blue combination, that could easily dupe the green-blue colors in the Wilderness palette. So if you just want the green and blues and you already have these two palettes, probably don't need the Wilderness palette. Again, if you really want the Wilderness palette, go ahead, order it. You know, I have nothing against BeautyBay. Like I said, I have some of their palettes already. They're beautiful. Okay, now if we're just looking strictly at the blue colors, one of the palettes in my collection that I felt could come close. Actually, this says the greens and blues. It's the Makeup Revolution. This is the Forever Flawless Ice palette, which I think is a dupe for the Jeffree Star Blue Blood palette. But if we look at the color story in here, you know, you've got your greenish blue tones and some neutrals, and I think it could make some similar looks to the Wilderness palette. I think it maybe not be quite as green as I thought it was, but it's still it's a great little palette. I've used it to make a lot of nice looks. Okay, now this one may be a surprise. It's the ABH Norvina palette, volume 2. But if we open her up, ugh, these things are so big. Okay, here we go. Greenish tones, blue tones. Doesn't have really any red, but you've got your neutral tones. You even have the orange and the yellow, and these palettes, I really love these palettes. The colors really blend beautifully. So if you have this and you're not worried about the red, you could use this to dupe the Wilderness palette. Okay, I think last but not least, I decided to take 3 monochromatic palettes from my collection and put them together and see if that sort of made a similar color story to the Wilderness palette. And what I found was, as far as the greens, the Just My Luck palette from ColourPop, from Lunar Skies Cosmetics, the Cobalt Moon palette, and from Beauty Glaze, the Berry palette. So if I open them up and put them all together for you, I think you will see what I'm talking about. So I think the green would be on top, blue on the bottom, and then the red. So let's see. Ooh, this is a feat of engineering. Okay. Ooh, we're losing it. Okay. Here we go. Your greens, your blues, a little bit of those reddish tones, and for me, I think I could make a look like the Wilderness palette using these, using a lot of these. So that was the last ones that I had. When I was looking through all the eyeshadows that I had and the palettes, I was like, there was a few other ones that I was like, this could maybe be a little bit similar, or that one, but I mean, I could have went crazy. It would have been very easy, but I said, let me try to condense, narrow it down to what I think would be the best examples. So now, like I said, BeautyBay makes great palettes. I have a few of them myself, and the only thing is I just have too much eyeshadow, too many eyeshadow palettes. Yeah, that's why I went and ordered that Sensorium palette. But I digress. Anyway, if you like that palette, by all means order it. From what I've seen, everybody loves it. They think it's great. I just decided I just don't have room for more palettes, especially since I probably already have the colors in my collection. And if I had to make a video to prove it to myself, then that's what I had to do. So, if you like what you saw here today, then please subscribe, please hit the like button, please feel free to share this video. You can always see me on Naughty or Nice with my co-star Alexis Flame. This is me, Tony Holmper. By the way, our merch is available on Threadless on the Naughty or Nice shop. So if you want one of these t-shirts for yourself, hop over there and order one. There's tank tops, there's coffee mugs, we even have masks. Here on Long Island today, we're getting ready for Hurricane Henri. Is it Henri or Henry? I'm not sure, but he's supposed to touch down tomorrow. So we're just all hoping that we don't see a lot of damage, and I figured, what the heck, let me make a video, because may not have power tomorrow, and if we lose power, we may not get it back for quite a few days, which will mean no video making for me. So I said, let me hop in front of the camera and just throw this out there. As I said in my prior video, I'm trying to get myself back into making content, just getting in front of the camera. Whether it's great or not, I figure it's better to just get here in front of the camera and do my thing. Otherwise, I'll never do anything, and that wouldn't be good. So, thank you all for tuning in, and look to see you in the next video. Bye-bye.